Good evening and welcome. At this time, I'll call to order the meeting, the regular scheduled meeting of the City of Clemson Planning Commission. The meeting is to be live streamed and recorded on the City of Clemson's YouTube channel. I'd like to remind everybody, if you need assisted hearing devices, we do have those available. And if you would just let us know, we would be glad to get that to you. The other thing, as we get into this, I'd like to introduce the commissioners. Commissioner Matt Carenza, Commissioner Tanya Hyatt, Vice Chair Greg Rice, John Crowley, Mr. Fred Burton, Jennifer Thaxton. In addition, we do have a quorum tonight. I'd also like to introduce the administrative staff. So from the planning department, we have Nathan Woods, we have Art Holbrook, we have Aaron Kelly with us tonight, and then substituting for Kelly Roach is Rebecca Wilbanks, and we appreciate the work that you do and for being here. At this time, as we always open every meeting, we want to open our public session. As a reminder, according to the City Planning Commission bylaws and rules, which we operate off of, this is a place for members of the public to address matters within the purview of the commission that are currently not on the agenda. The session shall be up to 15 minutes total, and each speaker may speak for up to 3 minutes. There may be speakers who have prepared copies of their remarks, and if they would like to attach those to the meeting minutes, you can do that. So we'll go ahead and open up for public comment. We do ask that you come up, state your name and your address at the podium. The way the microphones work here, they're all in the ceiling, so if we're not up here, people listening online cannot.
I'm Eleanor Hare, 202 Crest Circle. I'm here to talk about one thing about the hub. It's coming back to you because the major changes that were put in the document between your February meeting and the April 1 meeting actually require by law that it come back to you because of the increase in the commercial space from 8,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. Since it went over 9,000, your laws in Clemson require that it come back to you. Another major change was a change from 6 townhomes to 20. But my concern is this thing is not a mixed-use development. It is 98% residential. So when it comes back to you, would you please look at it and see if it really is mixed use? It seems to me that calling it mixed use may be a way to get around zoning. And that would be a shame. But just calling it mixed use does not make it mixed use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hare. We appreciate your comments very, very much. Thank you for participating. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on any issues not pertaining to things on the agenda tonight? Give everybody opportunity.
We're waiting on one person who's just parking right now and walking up and out, just to let you know.
So is that for this section?
Okay, I apologize.
We're actually on the agenda, so for the Branch neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to move on to, we're going to declare that closed. We will move on to the adoption of minutes from the March 11th, 2024 regular meeting. Have all the commissioners had an opportunity to review the minutes? And are there any edits or omissions that are noted?
I I move to accept the minutes as published.
There's a motion that's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? The motion is unanimous. The first action on our agenda tonight is PUD 2024. That's PUD 2024, The Grange. Staff, are there any updates, reports, or changes that have been sent in that we need to be aware of? Okay. So I'd like to ask members of the Grange if they'd like to update the commissioner on the proposal. As a reminder, you have 10 minutes for the presentation to the Planning Commission. If an extension is needed, we will discuss at that time.
Hello again. I'm Cassidy Machado Michaud. I'm with DPR Design out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We also have Daryl and Daniel here as well as representation from the ownership group. I just wanted to start off by thanking the commission and staff for their time tonight, the feedback from the previous meetings, and your continued engagement with us throughout the process. I think myself and the development team are all in agreement that the proposal and the plan is better now than it was previously because of that. Since our last meeting, we've worked diligently through your feedback in close coordination with staff to resolve the majority of the concerns that were brought up in previous meetings and the interim review and feedback. We've made significant modifications to our plans, the development ranges, and the ordinance to accommodate those changes. We acknowledge that we weren't able to come to a resolution on all of the feedback. I think the concern over the max building height and the permitted unrelated occupants are the ones that we weren't able to resolve due to the time constraints of the process. So what we'd like to propose to the commission is that we work together tonight to include conditions from the commission as part of your recommendation to council to resolve these outstanding issues in terms of height, building height and occupancy, and any other resolved comments that we may come up today. We would like to put on the floor for modification of the maximum building height from 85 feet to drop that down to 65 feet, and a reduction of the unrelated occupants from 4 to 3, with the exception of workforce or attainable units, which would remain at unrelated occupancy maximum of 4. So I guess with that, let's jump into the presentation. Again, you all have seen this before. I think it's
Can you back up one second?
Yes, sir.
Point of information. You're wanting to make a change in your document is what you're stating?
So I think that ship has sailed, but what I think the commission has the ability to do is with their recommendation, with your recommendation, is to attach conditions to that recommendation that goes to council.
Okay, and you said 65 feet to...
It was 85 feet of the maximum building height.
65 feet?
So we'll drop it down to 65 feet is what we're suggesting.
Okay, and then occupants?
So the unrelated occupants would drop from 4 to 3. Again, this is what we're proposing, and then obviously the dialogue tonight.
Except for the workforce housing.
Correct.
Okay.
If there's dedicated workforce housing or attainable units, those would remain at a maximum occupancy of 4.
Okay, we hear you. So please go ahead and take that time off of their time that I took up and let them have that time.
Thanks, sir. So we do want to be a true multi-generational mixed-use community focused on wellness, supporting local businesses, reconnecting with nature, learning, a space for your whole family, both old and new. Be the definition of live, work, play, focus on connections to nature, a true multi-generational community, and a destination and a home. So we'll go back through some of the site information. Again, we're talking about the phase 1 and 2, or development areas 1, 2, and 3, but phase 1, the existing Grange subdivision, is currently within the city of Clemson with an R20 zoning designation, and the proposed new development all happens in that area outlined in 2, which is development areas 2 and 3. This is just another slide of what's there today, so the existing subdivision and the undeveloped land. going down towards 18 Mile Creek. So this has been included in our application previously, but what we've done is bring this back to the forefront is the regulating site plan. So along with the ordinance, this would be the teeth that the city has to enforce kind of the development pattern and the ordinance as it pertains to the actual development on the site. So this is the regulating site plan. And then behind that is the conceptual site plan. So this is the anticipated build out of the project, the overall site. Yeah. So we'll just go through. We broke it down into 3 development areas. Development area 1 is the existing neighborhood, and so we've highlighted 4 separate areas of potential future development. We're permitting ourselves 11 additional units, but we're currently proposing 10 additional units in the areas highlighted out there today. So 3 single-family detached units and 6 attached townhome products.
6, or, because that's 9.
Yep, 7. Sorry, apologies. Math was not my strong suit.
It's okay. No issues. I got you.
That was a tough one. All right, we'll move on to development area 2. So the bulk of the proposed development that we're considering is in development areas 2 and 3. So this is a blow up of the regulating site plan. So you can see the circulation being defined, the building envelopes being defined, and the parking areas being defined here, along with the maximum range of potential build out. So as a minimum, we would be proposing the 32 dwelling units, which are in the plan south, closest to the stormwater management. To the bottom of the page there would be a single-family attached product, rear load. The maximum would be 214 units, and as shown is 104 dwelling units. For the non-residential development, the minimum proposed is 60,000 square feet of non-residential, maximum of 250, and as shown on our plan is 124,000. So the way that would set up, just to walk you through, how those ranges would be applied. So currently, right now, the entire first floor of everything but the townhomes is shown as commercial development. That gets us to the 124,000 number that you saw there. The second floor of buildings A and B is non-residential development as well. E and D are both single floor non-residential buildings, and C and F are currently shown as 2-floor multifamily above commercial. So those will be mixed-use buildings with a commercial component on the first floor and residential above, and that gets us to the residential number that we're shown there. The range in the commercial would be if there was a development scenario where C and F were developed as multi-story commercial only, so office over potentially retail. And so if you kind of stack the layers of the cake 3 levels up, that's what you get to the top number, the 250,000 square feet of commercial. If you were going to add more layers of the multifamily, that would accommodate the 215, I believe, the maximum residential units there would be. So looking at the character of what this town center would be, it would be the architecture focused around pedestrian and business uses. So the idea of the pedestrian core, plazas, retail inside and outside, food and beverage establishments flanking that, and then public open spaces defined by the architecture. So moving across the power lines to development area 3. So to the far north, closest to 123 there, is the existing block building that we would redevelop as an adaptive reuse. And then the bulk of the development is happening from the Chapman Hill extension down towards 18 Mile in that development area, shaded in red there. So the big shift in our development plan on this one was pulling back some of the flexibility for this development area and committing to a larger residential component of this development area. So with that, we're proposing a minimum development of 180 multifamily units, a maximum of 340 multifamily units, and as currently shown on the plan is 230 residential units. The hospitality component, we're requesting, the potential for that not to be developed but if that is developed, it would be a maximum of 250 rooms as a hospitality or hotel use. For the commercial, a minimum of 11,000 square feet and a maximum of 80, with an as shown of 17,000 square feet. So how those ranges would work with this site plan. So as shown, H is the adaptive reuse. J is in the bottom left of your screen there, is a standalone commercial piece of food and beverage or retail, non-residential use. I, the blue one, is the hospitality component. So that would be the maximum 250 room hotel. And then between buildings K and L would be 230 multifamily units. So the flexibility in the commercial number comes with, if the market brings us a demand for additional commercial, we would like to reserve the right for that first floor of building K and L to be converted from residential to commercial, with the residential happening above that. So that bumps us up from the 11,000 square foot minimum to a potential 80,000 square feet of commercial use there. The residential flexibility comes with building I converting from a hospitality use to a residential use. So that would bump the number up from our proposed 230 to 340 if the market does not bring the hospitality component there. Again, the character imagery for this one, we're committing to the public open space. The Green Crescent Trail is going to be along 18 Mile Creek. We've talked about amphitheater. We've talked about different program elements that would be included in that park and open space. But I think the character of this wants to be, more organic, more tied to nature than necessarily the town center across the Highland wants to be. So just ending the slide on the overall development tabulation. So this one you can see the consolidated ranges, development ranges that we're requesting, and then highlighted the development areas. And that's what we have for you today.
Okay. Thank you, Cassidy. We appreciate that. Thank you for coming and presenting and all your hard work on doing this. We appreciate that greatly. Now at this time, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? Please, if you do, please come to the podium, state your name and address for our record keeping. And as a reminder, each member, according to the bylaws adopted by the Planning Commission that we run off of, has 3 minutes to comment on the proposal before us tonight. Yes, and make sure you sign in as well. Thank you, Greg.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Melvin, and I live at 129 Yona. I'm a resident of the Grange, and we the residents of the Grange have collectively composed a letter, which I will be sending to you after the meeting, that is also addressed to the City Council, our HOA, DRB, and Young Blood Development Company. As it's probably going to take me longer than 3 minutes to read, I'm probably going to have other members from the community come up and finish the letter as we go through, just to keep with the time.
If they would like to cede their time to you and be the only spokesperson tonight, they're welcome to do that.
However they want to do it.
It's up to y'all.
So, just let me know.
Would you like to cede your time to her?
Yes, I would.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So this letter is to address the current and future grain homeowner concerns about the proposed planned development, the Grange, PUD 000212-2024. Over the last few months, current and future homeowners in the Grange subdivision have been made aware of plans for the remainder of Phase 1 and Phase 2 development of the Grange. While many of us have appeared at Planning Commission meetings and have attended Zoom meetings with Young Blood Development Company to voice these concerns, we feel it is time to outline these concerns in a formal communication. In the points below, we will outline concerns and misrepresentations on the part of DRB Group and Young Blood Development Company, as well as a list of requests the homeowners of the Grange are making. The current homeowners pay approximately $150 to $200 per month for HOA dues. The amount is dependent on the home style and location of the home. These HOA dues are to pay for the management of the HOA management company, the upkeep of common areas, insurance, landscaping, lawn maintenance, and amenities. And I want to emphasize amenities. As a sales tactic, most, if not all, of the homeowners were told that amenities would not be available in Phase 1, but they would. They would be available in Phase 2. The amenities presented to us included but not limited to a pool, a basketball court, a rec center, a clubhouse, a walking trail, and green spaces. Many of us purchased our homes assuming that this would be a reality, as they would be convenient for residents of all ages, and they would maintain and/or raise our property values. Many, if not all, of the homeowners were also told that the current HOA dues would cover the cost to upkeep and use of the amenities in Phase 2. As such, those amenities would be available to homeowners and were not to be available to the public. A few homeowners, particularly those near the roundabout on Founders Boulevard, were told that the areas by their houses and the original mailbox would remain green spaces. And those spaces are marked in those gray areas, just to let you know, that are now marked for future development. All right, where was I? Green spaces, there we are. The Grange was heavily marketed as a multi-generational community suitable for young people just starting out, families, and those entering retirement age. At the February 12, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, the homeowners learned that Phase 2 would not include any Grange resident-specific amenities, other than the walking trail, which too would be accessible to the public. None of the promised amenities would be a part of the neighborhood. The green spaces that were promised to remain green spaces were set to be developed as single-family homes, and that up to 11 units would be squeezed into the last few usable parcels of land. The proposed Phase 2 would add between 200 and 600 new residences, either as condos or single-family townhomes. The area would be largely retail, but might also contain a hotel, public park, and office space, and any amenities added to Phase 2 would be public amenities. The original plan for Grange was to be and we also learned that the original plan for the Grange was to be a 55 and older community with virtually no amenities. During a Zoom meeting between the Grange homeowners and Young Blood Development Company on March 6th, the homeowners learned that we were sharing ideas between the residents and representatives from Young Blood as to how to use the remaining space. Concerns about Phase 2 plans were discussed, including the upgrades required for Chapman Hill Road, the development of the usable green spaces, including the need for safe, dedicated spaces for adults, children, and dogs for recreation and social purposes, construction debris, the hours of construction in the neighborhood, and the HOA funds. Young Blood presented some potential ideas at the end of the meeting, outlining what or where amenities might be. The actual solution was not solidified. There was no formal presentation of a potential solution. No vote was taken by the homeowners of the Grange. No concessions or agreements were made on the part of the Grange homeowners. At the March 11th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, the homeowners of the Grange learned the Young Blood Development Company misrepresented the results of the Zoom meeting with the Grange residents, in that Young Blood presented that a formal resolution had been made with the Grange residents. The Young Blood Development Company mentioned that most of the usable green space for Phase 1 in the Grange community would be retained. There is no clear plan for the development of Phase 2, and as such, Young Blood Development Company wants flexibility to turn Phase 2 development into an apartment complex if the retail space does not yield the profits or potential profits they desire. The application is underdone and is missing key attributes like a clear plan for Chapman Hill Road, its extension to SC 88 and 18 Mile Road, and the bridge on Chapman Hill Road. The plan lacks a distinct timeline and an agreement as to how that project will be funded and what governing agencies need to be involved. A clear plan for what the development of Phase 2 would actually be. Would it be a retail or an apartment complex? Are they adding 200 dwellings or 600? Will these be condos, townhomes, or both? The renderings are not representative of the number of dwellings they intend to build and are not completely representative of the town center or retail space. The homeowners of the Grange emphatically request that the following be resolved and or addressed. We would like an emergency meeting between the homeowners of the Grange and the Clemson City Council to discuss the needs or to discuss these concerns directly with the city officials and decision makers. The HOA dues and what they are being used for monthly needs to be clearly documented. The bank account balance should also be shared with the homeowners. These documents should be made viewable to the homeowners in the CAMS portal and should be available to view indefinitely. Our HOA dues should not be used to fund or upkeep or the insurance for the amenities or for public use. If amenities in Phase 2 are not solely to be used by Grange residents, then our HOA dues will need to be reduced to reflect the financial burden, the reduced financial burden of not having to fund these amenities. Grange residents who have paid overpriced dues in anticipation of amenities should be compensated. Now that Phase 1 is nearing completion, there needs to be a clear timeline as to when the homeowners of the Grange will take over the HOA. The Youngblood Development Company needs to acknowledge to the City of Clemson that the usable green space left behind as a part of the next phase in the building is not, in fact, usable. Most of the remaining green space is steep terrain or is adjacent to steep terrain. The terrain is unsafe for most people, let alone children, and is not suitable for outdoor recreation or activities. Youngblood Development Company needs to acknowledge that the plan they have partially developed is not in line with how the community was sold to the current residents. The plan as is not suitable or safe for the communities with children. Youngblood Development Company must immediately cease plans to develop the remaining usable green space in our community until an actual, agreed-upon plan is developed and presented to the residents and implemented within the community. Phase 2 plans must not include an apartment complex as a backup plan. An apartment complex will reduce our home values and create a potentially unsafe environment for our families. As such, Phase 2 planning should not be approved by the Planning Commission or the City Council until a traffic analysis, including the analysis of the increased traffic for more residents and added retail, should be presented to the Council. Traffic analysis will need to include Chapman Hill Road, M&M Road, 18 Mile Road, and SC 88. A full market analysis of what the City of Clemson needs and what markets could be lucrative for Phase 2, retail space and office space. Doing so will provide proof to the city, residents, and potential businesses that retail space will have a higher likelihood of success. At the moment, it appears that Youngblood has not done this work, other than speaking to a few business owners about what they think. That's not a market analysis. Doing a formal, thorough market analysis will also help to ensure that our property values in Grange Phase 1 are positively affected, and the City Council, or in the City of Clemson, has its needs met as well. A clear plan for Chapman Hill Road improvements and who will be funding these road improvement projects needs to be fully planned and developed with timelines that match the building timeline for Phase 2 and for the safety of residents in Phase 1 in the event of emergency. All approvals from all governing agencies should also be attained. The considerations for this need to include upgrades to the bridge on Chapman Hill Road, the width of the road, traffic signal placement, extending Chapman Hill Road to M&N Road, 18 Mile Road, and SC 88. Plans to maintain the road safety within the Grange residential community to disallow or dissuade traffic from the residential portion of the community. The retail space is designed to be accessible directly from the community, which is helpful for the Grange residents to access it, but means that general traffic will be going through the front of our neighborhood, creating a safety hazard for our children. A plan that is presented that represents what we were sold, amenities for the Grange residents, a city center with retail that would be lucrative for the City of Clemson and the Grange community, and safe places for our children and pets to play in our community and be able to coalesce. This the end of the letter. We have about 40 committed signatures so far, and we're still collecting signatures.
Thank you for reading that. Thank you for sharing your concerns. Is there anybody else?
How much time is left?
About 3 minutes.
While he's signing in, I just want to remind you that we have conversations with council third Thursday of every month. It's usually at 740 Issaquena Trail. So if residents would like to attend, that's an opportunity to talk to council one-on-one.
Hi, my name is Arthur Ryan Carrick. I'm a resident of 108 Grange Valley Lane. We decided to build at the Grange in December and moved in June 28th. I'm very familiar with this industry. I work in this industry right now. I've been a career business development, marketing, sales, journeyman across a number of industries. I first want to state that a number of our residents with this letter that's been circulating will not sign in fear of retribution from the HOA for any improvements they want to do until there's clear resolution that we have a fair and honest voice and there will not be, any harm to any improvements they want to do on their lots. From a marketing standpoint, this is a classic bait and switch tactic. We built in the Grange because it had green spaces in phase 1. I have a 7-year-old daughter. There are probably 12 children within 6 houses. Without these green spaces, they're going to be playing on the streets. I know what the plan is. I know what DRB and all the national builders do. They want to maximize as much value as they can from the land they purchase. And as they've stated to one of our residents, they plan on filling up all the lots and moving to Anderson as soon as possible by July. They want to make profits. They do not really care about the long-term value of our property. It's basically going to end up being a tract-built, community. Hopefully that's not my time up. Okay.
We got about a minute.
I got a minute. Distance from phase 1 to phase 2 for the amenities that we were promised, and there's still signs that say amenities is more than a 15-minute walk from where I'm at. Probably a 25-minute walk. Multifamily units, we know this Clemson market, the enrollment, this is student housing. That's all it is. Safety, what we're sold on and this change in bait and switch is not right. It's not what we purchased. That's not the contracts. They are devaluing our community. They're devaluing our home property. I would have to say there's continued obscurity, even with the presentation today of what's happening. An amphitheater is not something that really is good for use. I don't know the last time an amphitheater, and even Patrick Square, which is less than a mile over, is not used. They have a great little green space for their community that's used. And I have to say that the story keeps on changing. Once DRB is done building, they're gone. With that, I'll have to say that the bait and switch, profits over, principle is unacceptable, especially in a city like Clemson for our residents, which is so important that we cannot turn into a tract-built community for profit only by all the national builders, and we know all the national builders that are coming in. Thank you.
Just one point of information. You said you had contracts that say that?
I'm sorry?
You said 3 contracts.
No, I'm saying that
Did you
in
have-
sales, in all of the sales and marketing material, and you can go drive by the Grange right now, you'll see a sign as you enter the Grange that says amenities. There's no amenities. There's nothing of that. Everything in our contract, when you see the plot for phase 1, it shows green areas. This is the information, the sales information that we were presented, the marketing materials. We are going to have green spaces within walking distance. There have to be 50 children between the ages of 7 and 15,
Okay.
all over the place.
That
It's going
clarifies.
away.
That clarifies. Thank you so much for
You're
coming
welcome.
and speaking.
You're welcome. Thank
We
you.
really appreciate that. I would urge you to send that letter to the city administration. They are the ones that do that. We're a volunteer committee of what that is. Many of these things that you're talking about are out of our purview in doing that. I believe the Grange was annexed. It originally started in Pickens County and was later annexed. So I hear you, but I urge you to send that to the city administrator. You can find his information on the Clemson website. It's Andy Blondo. I urge you to do that. Okay, with what's before us, any comment, any other thing we need to address right here? Okay. Any comments from the commissioners on what we've seen here today? That's what's before us.
I'm gonna probably say what I said a month ago. I feel like there's too much flexibility in this plan. We've never had a plan development since I've only been doing this a year and a few months, but I haven't had a plan development come through with this much flexibility. So I don't know who y'all are, and I don't know you, why you feel like you can bring this to us with all this flexibility, but I can't support it because of just the flexibility that is still there. It just seems like it could be more clear. And I know that you're asking for maybe, because of not having time constraints, you're asking for us to I make recommendations, but I feel like I've been saying all along and at all the meetings, there's too much flexibility, so.
Any other commissioner comments?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Tanya had mentioned as well, but again, when you have in my opinion, from my research, with a planned development, you do have flexibility from everything I've read. With this particular development, what I'm looking at is there's a lot of flexibility for a very small planned development. If we were looking at the entire 600 acres of land that's owned, or approximately, I'm not 100% sure what the exact math is on that, I could understand a little more flexibility on this particular plan. But to me, and from riding by and seeing the homes out there, this area appears like it's primed and ready to start being cleared and development starting to happen. I could be completely off basis with that. But with that being said, to me, it would appear, in my opinion, that some of these buildings would already have a decision made on what's going there, what's going to be put there, and not have that much flexibility on that. I appreciate you guys' willingness verbally to change some of the heights and the unrelated. I do appreciate that, but I think I'll kind of cede my time to someone else. That's just my thoughts on reading over this and what we've gone over over the past few months.
And why didn't we have a work session?
Can I address that when I make my comments?
Sure.
Any comments? Yes, sir.
I'm looking over the site standards, and I'm seeing a lot of vague language there, like shared drivers will be encouraged, something will be done if feasible, similar in architectural character, in keeping with, and I don't see commitments there on that. It's just very vague. as has already been pointed out. There's a lack of commitment, as I see it, to actually define those things. Some of the things that are going to be put in, there's no discussion as to who is, that might be made in concert with the city or the county or the state, but there's nothing that goes beyond there as far as the maintenance is concerned and the upkeep. And that's pretty much it.
Any other comments?
I'll add just about the building height. I am pleased that you're willing to come down to 65 foot because 85 foot is, in my opinion, too tall of a structure for this area for sure, especially for firefighting capabilities, things of that nature. So that is good that you're willing to bring that down to 65 foot from the 85 foot. And I'm hoping that did apply to both the multifamily, condo, non-residential. So that would include the hotel, whatever else that was being proposed. My concern remains still with the amount of flexibility in this multifamily types of home styles and dwelling units. Specifically what they're kind of geared towards. So if we're talking about age in place and over 55 communities, having those kinds of plans in place and knowing that will help with emergency services and knowing what kind of impact this is going to have on that whole area. Whether the current capabilities would suffice, or if that will have to expand on EMS or fire department coverage sides of it, depending on how this is built out. So there is just a lot of flexibility still in this plan. I'd like to see a little bit more geared towards what you really anticipate seeing here instead of whatever the market value holds at the time.
I mean, I share a lot of the same concerns with the flexibility and things, and one of them is I understand the need that we might need to swap this out. If we don't do the hotel, then maybe this would be residential, and I can understand that, but there's no language that I could find that says we'll only do X if Y. The way it's written as I see is you guys could do the hotel and then also do the maximum multifamily dwelling units. On the drawings, development area 3 for K and L, there's the other places had 2 to 3 floors listed. There's none there. So the way I read this and have read the standards is there's nothing to stop the hotel plus then also increase a floor or two to get to the maximum dwelling units if approved, which is a big range. I could see, like I said, swapping out if you're like, okay, this is gonna be a hotel, but now it's permanent residence. That's not as dramatic of an impact, but if we're looking at 300 units and it becomes 400 or 500 units, that's a bigger impact on top of the hotel. There's things like that that I have concerns with. There's plenty of other things in here. As far as parking, if you go, you've got it listed at the 1.3. If you do go to the increased max, is there enough surface space, or are you going to have to start putting in structures? If you do put in a structure versus the surface space, how is that addressed? The definitions you guys use for open spaces, there was one I just wasn't very clear about. It says you'll have 20%, and I've tried to figure out how to read the open space definition that you used. Where there's the main one, it says means any outdoor area, public, private, on the ground floor, unoccupied and unobstructed from the ground upward, including but not limited to areas accessible for outdoor living, recreation, or landscaping, but excluding areas paved for vehicular use. So that one has a clear definition, but there is another section that has a different definition that butts up against it, and I've lost my place, but it basically just said a building that's not a building. I just want to make sure that so private open spaces includes all areas not in buildings, paved streets, parking lots outside of common ownership. So on that one, a private open space would include paved streets? Your definition of private open space says includes all areas not in buildings, paved streets or paved parking lots outside of common ownership. Does that mean that the paved streets and paved parking lots outside of common ownership are part of private common open space, or private open space?
No, it would be, yeah, areas outside of the building, paved streets and parking areas would be included.
Okay. So nothing, okay. Complementary structures. And then under the common open space, you have it listed that it may contain complementary structures and improvements as are necessary and appropriate for the benefit and enjoyment of such residents or occupants. Is there a list somewhere of what would be constituted a necessary structure? Because some people may argue that a parking deck would be a necessary structure for a apartment complex or condo building, and I really wouldn't want to count that as open space.
No, it's only impervious area, so it's only where there wouldn't be any paved area that would ever be considered open space.
Well, this is a plaza.
Plazas, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying is some of this language is, you could go either way with some of it, and I think that's one of my issues is on top of the flexibility and things, a lot of the language would be something that you could argue both sides for if you really wanted to. And I think that's one of the issues that I have with being able to say whether or not this is good for the city or what you're proposing is good, because I can see what you've got up there, and then I read this and I can see something totally different in the language. And it's not saying that I'm necessarily opposed to that, but there's no guarantee with this that we'll get that. And I think that's the issue. And I'll leave it there, not because I just feel like that's kind of the main point for any of the other topics that I'm going to come up on.
Is that, Cassidy, is that something you'd like to address, any of these concerns, or?
Yeah,
Give me a second. Just ask, I want to go again, but if they have current count for the floors on the multifamily for that section. Before you get started on that, just a clarification, do you guys, since the rest of them were listed, it was one of the first comments, but do you have a current floor count or approximate floor count for the multifamily in Area 3? Buildings K and L?
There's development area 2 or development area 3? Yeah, there's structured parking there that's as shown, and it's 4 to 5 stories at K and L. Majority of it's 4-story. On the back side, because of the topography, there's an additional floor on one of those buildings.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is there total height of those buildings?
so the total height would be under the maximum of that 65, which we presented today, right? So that would allow us in building K.
As drawn though, with
Right.
the current numbers as drawn, how many floors is that building tall?
Yeah, so K will be a split level building, so on the high side would be 4, and on the low side would be 5.
Okay.
And then L is a 5-floor building, and then as it slopes down towards the creek, there's 1 level parking underneath of those 5 floors. So on the street, it would be 5 levels, so below that 65 feet.
Okay.
And then on the backside would have the 1 floor of the parking exposed out towards the creek.
All right, so L has parking underneath it.
Yeah, in this diagram, it has parking underneath.
Okay, and K, as you said, was,
Just a split level multifamily building with 4 floors on the high side and 5 floors on the low side.
no, so no,
No parking underneath of that one, no.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, when we talk about stuff like that's one of those, like, I had no clue I'm looking at surface parking only for this project on this presentation. Do we know how many spots are in the underground area?
We just have enough spots to meet the requirements that we provide in the ordinance, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, so you know a building is gonna be 5 floors with a parking garage under it, but we don't have that to look at?
But we don't know. That's what ideally we're presenting, but we don't have somebody that's gonna build that. So we cannot commit exactly to an architectural footprint. I'm not an architect. I can draw pretty plan pictures and I know how buildings relate to each other and create and frame public space. I know planning very well, but I don't go further than that. And so functionally, I do know that these buildings would work with the parking and kind of meet the intent of the ordinance. But we're not in a position, they're not in a position to commit to a specific building. Okay. And so that's why, as part of this process, we would still have to come through the Board of Architectural Review process for each component that is not a townhouse or a single-family detached house. So by approval of this, the city is not losing control of what happens out here. For each component of this project, we would have to come back through the Board of Architectural Review process to make sure that we're following the development standards and everything else that the Board of Architectural Review looks at.
Yeah, but the architectural review is not going to make you change necessarily a footprint of a major building. They may change materials of the outside and features and things, but if this, say, building L is what we're showing, and I understand what you're saying about nobody's committed to that, and that's why you guys can't, but if you were to take the allotted capacity for that building, and you came back and said, no, our guy that wants to buy it or wants to develop it, he wants to do 3 cylinder buildings side by side, and that's going to be our capacity at this height. It's under 65, and so it looks like something completely different that may or may not go in the area depending on who you ask, and everybody's got a different opinion. But that's what is, we could get a project that looks the exact opposite of what's being presented today if you were to just follow.
In all of our tables, we're showing you what's shown. So the footprint with the proposed density, the proposed use, the proposed units, as shown, that is our current plan. So when you ask for more clarity, that's our plan as clear as we have it today. It's a very clear plan. Everything that we have been working on for over a year is based on what is shown here, even with all the changes that we've made, with the changes even over the last week that we provided to y'all. We provided significantly more clarity. So that's the plan. Don't look at the min and the max, look at what's shown. That's our plan.
The min and the max matter.
Yeah,
right. If that's the plan, then why not put that as the min and the max, and then if you need a variation later, come back and ask for a variation later.
Well, once again, for the flexibility that the PD allows us, the flexibility that the staff that we've been working with over a year asked us to consider and to implement into our plan. I mean, we've dumbed it down as much as possible. And that's what we have today. That allows us, in case of, that hotel changing to a residential building, we're giving you that's what's converting the as shown to a maximum. So that's what that means. And we've tried to clarify that for you today.
And like I said, I understand that, but there's also nothing in this document that and if I'm missing it, please point it out, that says that you can't have the maximum and the hotel.
No, that's according to all of our designs and calculations, you can't do both. It's going to be one or the other.
You couldn't since you have a 65-foot height limit, you couldn't add a floor to those other buildings and get up close to that?
We're not going to be able to have that hotel with 250 units and all the residential units maximum. There's no way.
You just can't do it on that.
I mean, that's only, that's about 6 acres there. I mean, it's less than 6 acres.
Yeah, unless you did taller than 65 feet and structured parking underground, not even, I think a deck wrap wouldn't even work. You couldn't max out the maximum of both residential and non-residential in that.
So let me clear this up and see if this helps. What I hear you saying, and if I'm wrong, that's okay, because I've been wrong way many times before, is that you're committing to this layout.
The building envelope and the parking and the traffic circulation is what we're committing to. We've tried to show that in all the exhibits that are in there to give you clarity on what's proposed.
Does that help?
I mean, I understand it, but I still don't understand why there can't be language that.
So you're looking for, John, I apologize for interrupting,
That's
but
fine.
you're looking for like trigger language, like if we don't get a hospitality component, then we could.
Right, like you could swap it out, and that's something I think concrete we could look at, because we can evaluate the impact of both of those aspects of it and see what that impact is gonna be. And I understand what you're saying about right now it's not feasible, but I don't have I don't have what you guys have for the construction knowledge over there as far as what you can and can't build. To me, if you can't build to 65 feet, then why do you need that limit put in there?
Well, no, we can build to the 65 feet, but even with that 65 feet, you're not gonna come close to hitting the maximum of both.
Okay, so if you went 65 feet on K and L, how many units would that add?
You're pushing 65 feet.
You just said it was,
It's 5 floors, probably 10 and a half feet per floor.
65 there, split level over there.
I mean, you could squeeze another one in there, but if you switch the first floor to retail, they went 14 to 20 feet base height for their thing, so that pushes you right up to the 65 with the 5 floors total. So that would be 4 floors of residential over top of 1 commercial.
And regarding the clarity, some of the definitions on open space, I mean, we can commit to you, with the conditions on approval today, that we can go back to y'all's ordinance and we can tighten up, the definitions on the open space to make them more clearly match some of the definitions that are in your ordinance. I mean, we did revise the definitions in the open space. We thought it might make it more clear, but if we can make another attempt, we're committed to do that. I mean, that's pretty minor, and we wouldn't have a problem doing that to give clarity on the open space.
I feel like I'm kind of monopolizing time here if anybody
It's
else.
okay. Any other questions that you need answered here that will provide clarity? So, let me answer the commission's question about meeting. It's been a very complex project. Being new, coming in here, participating remotely in the last meeting, there was not enough time when all the players could get together for a work session. However, what I'd like to go through is kind of a timeline of what happened in between, since everybody could not get there. And I think Tuesday the 26th, the city had a meeting to be able to unfurl some of the things that have been going on. There were a lot of questions. I did attend that meeting. Andy Hornado, also our assistant city administrator, planning commission, or the planning department, were there along with Young Blood Development. One of the biggest issues, as you can tell, that I had from my comments in the last time was the tightening up on the PD ordinance. And as you can see, they've done a ton of work on that, we had a meeting on Tuesday the 26th. Nathan sent right after that meeting concerns immediately at that time. At that time, it was my understanding that it would take about 2 days' work that was committed to, or what I heard in the meeting. And we did not get anything back until April the 2nd. There was a list of concerns at that time that came from the Planning Commission, or not the Planning Commission, the Planning Department. Those concerns were sent back immediately on that. We did not get anything. And then there was another email sent on 4/3 from the planning department. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, addressing that. And then there was an email sent back from Youngblood Development about what they brought up today. Out of all of those things, they did go in and address each and every one of them in the ordinance. And as you can tell, if you look at that chart and compare it to the patch chart of what is possibly to be built, that was cleaned up in a big way to do that. The hard part was that it was very frustrating. And I say this on the record, I personally took it upon myself once we got the last one, because it didn't meet it, is I personally called Cassidy to tell him that I was very concerned about section 106 in the height. I told him that I was very concerned, section 109, because in this document, some of the language is still concerning. We do not define what purpose-built student housing is. That is not defined. I told him at that time they had limits in one section, that it said no more than 2 related occupants, and he ran it by, and I received a call, and I was told, it ain't gonna happen, we'll stick with it. Tonight, as they thought about it, they've come back to propose something. It's very concerning. I told Cassidy that, and I also mentioned in the meeting, one of the concerns was the ability for this planning commission had to spend their weekend looking through these documents, but this is a new start to be able to do that. Timeliness and getting things back and being able to go back and to hear all the comments have been of concern. So that's what happened with the work session. We could not make that happen in time. I can tell you it is hugely cleaned up from what it was. You know, I guess for me, in my comments in this, is kind of comments that I mentioned in that original meeting, is that would you be willing to change the max instead of in height to no more than 4 stories? Also, would you be willing going back to a maximum occupancy of 2? We are not comfortable with the language in the PD, as I personally explained to you, nor is the planning department here at the city of Clemson with that language in there, and the zoning part. I just reached out to tell you the truth, and I also told you we were going to talk about it here tonight too, didn't I?
Yes, sir.
Because it needs to be on public record. Here's the deal. We've been trying to help get to the finish line, and that's what I mentioned to you. The big deal, and I actually, if there are other outside things that happened before, that's not in our purview within this section. That is a different issue. That is a different, we weren't here, nor did we have that. So the other part in here is throughout the document, it goes as defined in the pending Phase 2 Utility Service Annex Agreement for the Grange Subdivision Phase 2 Agreement. That doesn't exist. That would not need to be in a plan development ordinance, even though that is going to be done, and that would be done by Nathan. Can I ask a point of information?
Sure.
Who would that be done by?
It would be done by work with the developer and administration and approved by council.
Okay, and so that would be working with their council and everybody, and that would be an agreement that came through. So part of my concern still, in hearing the comments of the rest of the commissioners here, And what they're saying is, I do get it, but words matter. Words, written words matter. And what's written in here matters. And so that concerns me. It also concerns me that it was 4 o'clock today that a decision was made to want to change something. We discussed on our phone call, and I asked you to relay that since words matter, that it may be better for us to take a little more time. And basically, the word came back. Cassidy, am I saying anything that's untrue?
No, sir.
And word came back, it doesn't matter. Just move it as it is.
That was Thursday afternoon.
And I even gave him till Friday.
And we had state orders that were in surgery. Others
I understand.
were out of town. It's hard to make those decisions without talking to the main stakeholder.
I understand.
So we needed some time to look at it, and we've had, I see your stack there.
And
We've had.
Daniel, I'm good.
This is our stack of revisions. These things maybe could have been brought up before the Thursday before the work meeting.
Say that one more time, please.
These are the revisions that we have made at the request of you guys. If there was something that was a deal breaker, it could have been brought up before Thursday afternoon, before Monday night meeting.
Okay, so let me address that to you. I don't think you understand that it was brought up, it was sent to you, and when you responded to it, it was not addressed, and it was addressed in a different manner than was requested by the planning department. Is that not correct?
No, we met it as far as
Jacob?
the no purpose-built student housing. That was a recommendation of staff on March 26th.
No, I understand that, but what I'm telling you is that there were 2 things in there, section 106. Cassidy, you're gonna have to help me here. The height. We got Cassidy's email at 12 noon on that day, and it did not address section 106 or 109. We got it at 12 noon, and a response was sent back from the planning department, and then I took it upon myself to call and to question. So I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I want the record to be set straight that telling me that it was addressed at the last minute, it was addressed when we got the document, and it was addressed within 30 minutes of when we got the document.
How long had it been in there?
Excuse me?
How long had that 85 feet been in there?
85 feet has been a concern of Mr. Crowley's here since the very first meeting before I was on the planning commission. And if you go back and look at that very first presentation, Mr. Crowley explained 85 feet a bunch of times. And if you go to the next one, he explained it, and the next one. I'm not here to argue with you. I am here to give you the facts of what happened. I am here to help get to the finish line, but you have heard the comments of the people here, and that's what we want to do.
We would like a vote. We've addressed all your concerns.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Please, Mr. Youngblood, please understand this is not meant to be adversarial. I just needed Cassidy to confirm that that was the conversations that we had. Cassidy, is that the conversations we had?
That's correct. That's what we discussed on Thursday.
So, therefore, I just want the truth to be there versus an interpretation of what had been said. And it has been confirmed of that. So now,
I didn't dispute that was the conversation Thursday.
so
I would like to make a motion not to recommend PUD 000212-2024 proposed plan development The Grange to city council.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion on the table that the PUD 000212-204 The Grange not be recommended as a planned development to City of Clemson City Council. Is that correct?
Correct.
Seconded by Mr. Rice. Council members, any discussion, commissioners? I'm sorry. Okay.
Excuse me.
No, we have a motion on the table. We have a motion on the table. That's a point of order. Our public session is done. Apologize for that. I just have to follow the rules that are laid out here, sir.
I understand. I've never been to
Okay.
the city, but I just learned the information the gentleman came out.
Okay. I can't, that is out of purview, so point of order. With the motion on the table, all in favor of the motion not to recommend PUD 000212-2024, The Grange to City Council, raise your right hand, please. Any opposition to that? The motion carries. So right now, what we need to do, are there any advisory items?
No, sir.
Okay. We have a discussion item on the table. The discussion item on the table has to do with potential rezoning. Nathan, Jacob?
I'll give a presentation on this one. Okay. So I believe all of you have been supplied with the map showing the proposed location for the zone change. It is along Highway 76 and actually goes all the way to Ligon Street. And it is encompassed mostly is existing housing. So there is existing townhouses and an apartment complex back there. And their current zoning is RM1, making them non-conforming under the current zoning district. Our proposal is to change them to RM4 and include the adjacent vacant properties as well, changing them from RM1 to RM4. This is the area off of 76 going down to Ligon Street, as denoted on the map. Basically, it came to our light. We had some people coming in talking about, the vacant properties. A lot of this is the concern over the existing uses that are there that are currently non-conforming. At one time, RM1 did allow for multifamily and townhouse development, but the ordinance has changed over time, so now RM1 is no longer it's single family and duplexes. So it's leaving these properties as now non-conforming. And they predate even when we had occupancy rules, but this would bring them into conformity. So in case something did happen, fire, that type of thing, it could be rebuilt. But it also does open up some of the adjacent properties for redevelopment or development because they are vacant currently.
So you're saying there are some properties in this RM1 zoning that do not fall into two-family residential?
Correct. There's an existing apartment complex back there and a townhouse development. So these would be bringing them into conformity.
Tony, these are the ones right past the substation. Those townhomes right there.
On the right?
Yeah, the wood.
So those townhomes are in RM1?
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is if they burnt down, they couldn't be rebuilt.
And that's scary because these are all individually owned. So we don't like that. We don't like to leave nonconformity around. And this seems like an appropriate place to do higher density. What's there doesn't seem out of appropriate. It's very close shot to campus. It's not really in the neighborhood. So it seems appropriate. That's why we're proposing it. And again, we do not want a situation where something did happen back there and they couldn't rebuild, because that gets a very messy situation.
So why did we make it RM1 to begin with?
Well, it was always RM1. It's what we did was, so surprisingly, we've actually, no one, if you actually go through the old zoning, over time we've actually downzoned the whole city repeatedly. That's the truth. It used to be like right off of College Ave going into like the Pool Lane, Edgewood, you used to be able to do multifamily there. We've actually downzoned over time, pretty much the entire city. As basically reactionary as a development happens, people get upset and they're like, oh, well, let's change that. And that's happened over time, numerous times. So what you used to be able to do kind of more, I guess, with more of the property than you can today.
Do you, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah, that's what this is. That's why it says discussion on
Yeah,
there.
I know.
This is
but I
just for
wanted to make
discussion. There's
sure-
no vote tonight, so any
I wanted to
questions?
make sure you were finished with what you had to
Oh,
go
yeah.
over with.
No, I'm here to answer questions at this point.
Okay.
That was my entirety of the presentation.
Are there any negative side effects, even if we're looking 50 years down the road, of what could be built there?
RM4 allows for 4 stories and occupancy of 4. So, I mean, you always have to assume that all these will be ripped down maybe someday and a big apartment complex could go out there.
Yeah.
I would say an example that would be easy for you guys to visualize. You guys know the lofts are going down to Cochran Road? You could totally envision something like this going in there. So to be clear of like what could take this place, that would be something that would be permitted by right there after this was done.
But I'm sorry, but even if somebody were to go in and say, you know, yeah, we want to build a 4-story apartment building there, I'm guessing from what the city's looking at is because you're on a major thoroughfare there, you wouldn't have the impact.
Correct. We do not see that as being a negative
Okay.
because of its proximity, its location. So that's why we are, you know.
It does worry me though that if,
But these are neighborhoods that it's next to.
It's just basically a road of with townhouses on it right now.
Where is this again?
So like if you're going, you know where the new substation is off 76?
The new substation, yeah.
Yeah. So those wooden condo or townhomes right past it.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about. Okay. And there's a piece of property next to it that.
Leaving town on the right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're leaving town on the right, yes.
Okay.
So right before that, you can't see it because it's kind of angled weird between those townhomes and the substation is another piece of property that we're grouping in with this just because it makes sense.
And Ligon Street is the one that cuts back.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this would go all the way to Ligon Street. So to Mrs. Hyatt's point, theoretically, an apartment complex, say something this gets completely ripped out and that apartment complex is there, well, there's an apartment complex that does exit through Ligon Street. That is their only way out is through Ligon Street currently. And that could continue. This could have another access point out Ligon Street if this was redeveloped in higher density. That is a possibility. Be right there.
I guess it would worry me as well that from a negative standpoint, since it is RM1 now, that if they're individually owned and it burnt down, they can't build back what's already there.
Yeah, that's the kind of biggest concern.
That's the catalyst for the conversation.
Yeah.
For sure.
It is surrounded by RM2?
Correct, RM2.
How old are these structures?
They're built in the 1970s, most of them.
Okay.
So, never mind.
And the other one on the other side of the gap in there is the brown wood ones that are down in the hall. And those are individually owned, and I don't see people selling those because they're selling them for...
They come on the market occasionally, but very, very rarely.
The last one I saw came on 449,000.
Strong, yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, I'm not sure where we're supposed to go from here in this discussion. I actually think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Because if I owned one of them, I'd want the ability to build it back. It would scare me to death. I also would be scared to death if the insurer, with my insurance company.
So what concerns me is the little leg.
Yeah, that's where the current apartment complex, so the apartment complex is not connected to the townhouses. The little leg you're seeing is where it currently comes out to Lincoln Street. So that's, I kind of encourage everyone, if you have time to go out there and drive, to check it out. Again, this is just the first kind of throwing it out there, guys, I think.
The townhome thing you're talking about are the ones down in the hall?
Yeah, the townhouses are accessed
There's
only off of
apartments.
76. The apartments are only accessed off of Ligon Street.
What apartments are those?
Ooh, I don't even know if they have a name.
Yeah, I mean,
They're old apartments?
they are, they're green, and they come on the market all the time, and I almost pass out every time I see them go up, and people buy them.
Yeah, you probably don't even know they're back there, but there's
You
a
don't.
whole big old apartment complex back
You
there.
don't, it's old.
What is RM2?
RM2 is almost the same as RM1, except so it's single family, duplexes, and mobile homes.
Mobile home.
Yep.
And just for clarity, we explain RM3 also.
RM3 is allows for multifamily, so basically units above and below each other, townhouses, and the same thing with RM4. The only difference between RM4 and RM3 are occupancy limits. So you could have occupancy of 4 in RM4 and only an occupancy of 3 in RM3. But the housing types are single family, townhouses, duplexes, multifamily. And basically the difference between multifamily and townhouses are that units above and below each other.
Okay. So basically, this will be zoning for what's already there.
Correct. This is to bring it into current zone. Like, yes, it'd be zoning what's there.
Except the little dots are duplexes?
No, those are the apartment buildings. So they're individually owned apartment buildings. They're very strange, I guess.
Like, this one right here has 4 apartments in
Yeah,
it.
it's 4 apartments grouped together.
Right. And the next
I've seen it.
That's what they're calling town.
I've been,
I don't even
I've been to these, they're,
Didn't either.
Yeah.
Ligon Street Apartments.
yeah.
Cedar one.
Cedarwood? Cedarwood. There you go.
That's,
Yes.
So these are all townhomes and apartment complexes right now?
Correct.
There is no homes.
There's no
So
single family in
the
any.
apartment complexes where that RM1 is, the townhome type things are, there's a space, and then it's down here, and they're kind of the rust color.
This is not rezoning any single family homes.
Right.
This is only rezoning apartments and townhouses and vacant land. There's some vacant land.
Basically what it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the goal.
I mean, townhomes are essentially the same concept.
But to be very clear, there is some vacant land in there that could be redeveloped, that could be developed. So it's not like that, there is some vacant land as well.
Is there any reason when the little, I don't know how to describe it, the piece behind this, I guess between it and the botanical gardens is being left out? Because that would leave just a little skinny piece of RM1 kind of floating back there, and just didn't know if that's something we wanted to consider doing, or if it's fine the way it is,
We can
or.
absolutely look into that. I'm trying to remember what the deal is with that part over there.
I figured there was probably some
Yeah,
deal with
I
it,
think
but I
that
just
one
didn't.
is a single family residence that they own a big chunk back there. But I think that's probably they got bought from the Botanical Gardens, but.
Which one?
He's talking about the RM.
If you look at the RM1 that's not included in the box, so this area right here, I was just wondering why we were rezoning the rest of it and leaving that.
I mean, we can absolutely look into that. We were just trying to really capture the nonconformity at this time.
Right.
That was the idea, but we can absolutely look at that. I believe you said that's vacant land with like a single family house on it.
Well, I didn't know, that's what I was curious, because it hits the multifamily zoning and touches the R20, and I didn't know if it would.
That is also part of it, is that we try to stay away from R20, like bringing multifamily directly against R20 is a hot button that I didn't really want to do.
Right.
Right, okay, that's completely fair. I was just curious as to why, like, if that might be something we wanted to address separately.
If you go down Ligon Street, it's all, not all, but it is vast majority student housing, purpose-built development already.
Because that little piece is gonna wind up being landlocked, is it not?
Depending on how things get developed, pretty much.
But how do you get to, if there's a house back there, how do you get there now?
If it's attached to this R20 lot over here, then you could come in that way, and if that's all one parcel.
I think that you would have to come off, that Bentbrook Farm neighborhood is basically where you come into back there.
Yeah, that's that piece. Yeah, we could potentially require a street easement to it for access.
Yeah, if this got redeveloped, we do the same thing as we always do and leave a stub for future development, even if it's zoned differently, to have some sort of access to it.
Is it anybody this doesn't make sense to? Because I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, my only thing is, I don't know if we're approving, or if we change the zoning. I feel like sometimes in Clemson, you can bring 4 stories up next to I just don't know what the RM1 is that's right there. And I just need to drive by there, because what I'm thinking is, I don't mind something being 2 stories next to someone's home, but this makes sense, changing it, but then I just want to be careful that we're not.
And then I can also get you, if you're interested, there are different buffer requirements. So say a 4-story building is going next to a single-family home. That has a larger buffer requirement than if it was another multifamily or commercial. So I can get that for you for the next meeting and say what the different buffer requirements would be for the adjacent properties.
Is it based on the home on the parcel or based on the parcel? Because like if that home's tucked in the woods.
The buffer goes onto the development side. So the buffer, so say there's a 25 or 40-foot buffer requirement, that would be on the multifamily property side. So it doesn't really matter where the house is.
Okay.
So what you're saying is if they came in here and tore all this down, and there would have to be 40 feet all the way around.
Let me check to see what the buffer number is, but there is.
No, but I'm just saying if that was a number.
Correct, yes. And the buffer would be, there's a required fence.
Then I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
Which would render, in a sliver of land like this, some of the property unusable, obviously, and you would get, even though you're essentially upzoning to a higher density, you'd get lower density because of the buffer, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
You can build
And
less.
there's also open space requirements with RM4 and everything, like that, as straight zoning in some ways is much easier than doing PDs because this has all been flushed out. We have set number of open space, we have set number of tree canopy, we have set buffers. It's all been thought out.
I agree.
You can see the smile. You can see the smile on my face. It's like, but yeah, it's like this is when planning is fun. But I do encourage you to drive out there because one of the things I have tasked Jacob with, because we run across. This is not the only one of these in the city that is zoned non-conforming into where well, there was an earthquake the other day in New York. So say an earthquake knocked down a bunch of buildings, a lot of them couldn't be built back the way they are right now. They would have to be. And we're trying to, they have to be rebuilt to what they allow. So one of the things I've asked Jacob to do is, as we're going through the comp plan and new planning commission and talking to you guys, is just go through that and fix it where appropriate, and just get everything correctly zoned.
Because no one after the fact, it's going to be a disaster. Say these did burn down, and then you have, like, who gets to rebuild? Because not everyone's going to be able to, but they're all individually owned,
Yeah. So I'm really not trying to open a can of worms or anything, just informational question. Because we're talking about the not being able to rebuild after some kind of
Disaster.
out of your control, unforeseen circumstance. Is there not provisions in the code that address that? Because
so we went through this before, and you guys actually, the last plan made it stricter. So single family can do it with a special exemption, but no, multifamily doesn't have the ability.
Okay, so that's because I was going to say, I was like, some of the larger projects, the PDs and this and that downtown all have riders that say if it's beyond control or whatever, that it gets. And that's what I was trying to figure out. So multifamily is the only thing in town right now that can't be rebuilt if it's destroyed outside, if it's non-conforming.
Right. Well, there are some commercial that have height issues that could not be rebuilt in their current situation, and there are some mixed-use developments downtown that could not be rebuilt in their current situation.
Okay.
But we did, if you remember, we had that ordinance that we tried to address all of them as much as we could, but there is a couple little things here and there that would be issues.
But sometimes we don't always want things rebuilt exactly like they were.
Correct, and I think that's why I say where appropriate. And we, as a staff, and you guys are the planning commission, you can tell us we're absolutely wrong. We feel like this particular one's appropriate.
I would say though, one thing, not getting into that next one, but it was brought up about the RM1. If you left it as RM1, it's going to protect that R20.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. We talk about transition buffers, and that's usually what you want to do is multifamily, RM1, single family,
Anybody else? Okay, so I think we've got our marching orders to go look at it, and you're gonna find out the other information, and then we'll.
We can communicate through email, you know,
Yeah.
we'll keep you all updated. This is just, honestly, these are the fun projects for us, so.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll probably send you guys out the buffer requirements and then the conditional use standards for multifamily, because you guys probably have never, you know, it's not something you guys look at, but you should probably know, like, you know, what are required in multifamily when they come in if they're going straight zoning.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Before we close the meeting, what I'd like to do, anybody watching, anybody here, you can get the word out. We got staff reports. Sorry, any staff reports?
I've got one thing, and it's we got a final plat expected in on Vickery Road project. It was approved 2021. Everything has been bonded out. Well, bond numbers have been approved. We're still waiting on the final bond coming to the city engineer. When that happens, they'll give me a final plat, and it's the chair signs it just because it was approved by the planning commission. And so I'll be contacting you for that whenever it's all right, because I'm still waiting to hear of the bond approval. That will notify me, and I'll set all that in motion. Just as a wanted you to know that's coming. So that'll be, I think there's like 90 lots out there, and this will be the second phase of that. They did it in phases. So, all right, that's in the works. That's the only thing I've got.
Anything about council?
No, there's nothing coming up at the, nope.
Okay. I don't think there's any need for future workshop or events at this point.
I was gonna mention something about that. I don't know if anybody had any interest in doing it, but we used to just kind of have a set date every month. That way there wasn't scrambling whenever it came up. You know, we would kind of figure out this day works for all of us. If we need to do a workshop, it'll be on this day unless there's some other circumstance, and didn't know if that's something you guys wanted to go through and try to set up, or just to kind of pre-plan, like I'll plan second Monday and fourth Tuesday or the 25th or whatever of every month, and then if we don't need it, then it's just canceled and it's free or whatever.
That would also give any petitioner a deadline. Okay, we're going to discuss this on such and such a date, so we need this kind of information by then.
For me personally, I think there's a value in a workshop on every one of these from now on. For me personally, I think the hardest part has been, and I've heard some people who have been on the commission say that the dates just didn't work for them because of their job and things. I think it's very important on these initial ones that we try to set dates individually instead of one date to see how it works out. That's just my opinion, my personal opinion, because when we have the next one, I think it's important that everybody's there, that in any possible way to do that. I don't disagree with you. I just believe that in the beginning here as a new planning commission, that would work out better and then set a date based off of that. So what I'm saying is the first one that we have a workshop, agree on a date for that, and then see if we can find any commonality in the agreement of a time and a place. But that's not my decision, that's all y'all's decision.
I mean, Art could send us a Google, whatever, your Google Forms, and we could just pretend we're gonna have one, you know, in April or May, and what days of the week, so you kind of have an idea.
Yeah, did that? Yeah, well, we did that. Does that work? And then if we.
Or in like a time of day, and it needs to be check all that apply. Like just check, don't check what your favorite time would be, but if you're available any of those times, check all that apply.
Yeah, I got you. You're talking about like sending it in the April one thing.
I'm just talking about right now, get an idea of like whether we're ever available together.
Right.
I do have one point of clarification, and not your fault because you didn't know, but the conversations with council, if any of you want to attend, is actually at the Downs this time instead of the fire station. So.
Oh, I checked online before I made that announcement.
I'm sorry.
So online, it's not correct.
I'll get that corrected.
The email blast that went out did mention the
Clemson
Downs.
Downs.
Okay.
Because I
And so
Googled it.
as soon as you
and
said it, I
that's
meant to say something, but I just lost it.
Yeah, I meant to in the moment too, and I forgot, but, yeah, that's at the Downs, and then Art and I will get together and send out a poll, like you asked, but, I mean, I think some of you being new and recognizing how difficult these decisions are, I think it's a good idea to have something standing that if we counsel, but there's a lot that goes into all of these, and we certainly appreciate the time you guys put into it.
I think if we're talking I just think we can get a lot accomplished in a workshop.
I agree. I've already mentioned that to Nathan and Jacob. I mean, it was just too short a time to do the other one. I believe these things are such important decisions, and there's so much great feedback. I mean, I'm learning so much from everybody and perspectives that we need to have those on these pretty much standard.
Well, I think it'll also serve for things like with the comp plan review coming up, when it's like, hey, when can we meet to have this presentation? Well, if we don't have any projects coming through, we're like, oh, that Thursday we're supposed to have a workshop, we know everybody's available and can be there, and we're not booked for that. If whoever's presenting can do it on that day, we know everybody's available, we don't have to worry about it.
So, last thing I'd like to mention to the public, if that's okay, to people watching about YouTube, people that are still here, it is very, very important to this planning commission that people participate with this comp plan coming up. And the way to do that is you go to the City of Clemson website, and there's a banner on top. And on that banner, not only can you complete a survey, there are different areas and maps and concerns like that. This is super, super important, because if the ratio is only 10% of people respond, we do not get the full feelings of everybody. This is huge. And I would encourage all of us here, to anybody we talk to mention we need the data and how the citizens feel. With that said, is there a motion to dismiss?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Anybody else?
I'll second it.
All in favor?